So, does HR need to be disrupted? Should you be more disruptive? And what does that even look like anyway? The source of Disrupt HR is my guest this week for my 5th anniversary episode, EA. And that whole discussion is coming up now. Hi there, I'm Andrea Adams, and this is the HR Hub. On the show, we talk about all kinds of things related to HR. You could please subscribe to the show or to the podcast to keep learning from my fantastic guests. So, as I alluded, today my guest is Jennifer McClure. She almost needs no introduction, but I will say it. She is the one who founded Disrupt HR. That's the global movement that most of us have heard about or even participated in. She's also a professional speaker and trainer. Hello, Jennifer. How are you?
Well, thank you for having me here today, and congratulations on your 5th anniversary.
Well, thank you. I'm excited. I'm excited about that. You know, just as we were about to hit record, you were talking about a labor of love. I tell you, this is a labor of love too.
Yes, I understand that.
Yeah. So I do want to talk though, just focus all about disruption and disruption in HR and why you think we need HR, or why you even founded the Disrupt HR movement. So why do we need disruption in HR? Do you think we get into a rut too easily?
That would certainly be a big part of it. I think, we've all been disrupted, especially over the last 5 years. I know I thought during 2020, 2021 that no one would ever want to be disrupted again. But the truth is it's happening to us all every day, all the time, and at a faster pace than ever before. So does HR need to be disrupted? It is being disrupted. Outside forces are causing things to need to be done differently, to be looked at differently, to think about a future that we can't predict what's going to happen. So the old ways of doing HR have always needed to be reevaluated, relooked at, but not everybody did that. Sometimes we just got in a rut and we said, this is the way it's done. And these are the systems that we have. And these are the processes that we use. And rarely did we deviate from that. And a lot of HR people were and are still comfortable with that very kind of in the tracks way of thinking. But the truth is, again, the way the workplace is evolving, the way the world is evolving, the way technology is changing, we have to look differently at everything. And Disrupt HR was started really to allow people to share their ideas about how to accomplish that. And over the years, we've been around since we're about to come up on an anniversary too, as of this recording.
Yep.
Our 12th year anniversary for Disrupt HR is December 13th. We started in 2013. And so the goal was, again, to give people an opportunity to share their ideas about the work and the workplace and how we could think differently about the future of work back in 2013. But here we are 12 years later, and over 10,000 people have taken the stage on Disrupt HR events around the world and shared their ideas. Are all of them truly disruptive? No. Some people it's disruptive for them to challenge themselves to get up on a stage and speak and share their idea and survive. And some people have shared really disruptive ideas, and some people have shared, diversity is good, you need a benefits plan, all that stuff, which is just the way things are. But again, they had the opportunity to share their take on it, and that's why and what we're all about.
We don't want change for change's sake, I don't think. We've got enough change coming at us without inventing it. So when is disruption a good thing, and when's it a bad thing? I mean, I want to validate all those people out there who don't want change, but also challenge them.
Well, again, I think don't want change, I would be wary of that. Do we like change? Absolutely not. As humans in general, we just don't like change. Should we be seeking out change even when things are working well? I think so, because often there is maybe a better way of doing something that's working well, or a way we need to think differently because things are changing around what's working well. So our tendency, again, as humans and HR people, has always been to be reactive. okay, this happened, so therefore we need to do something different. Now we need to look at our policies, or now we need to hire differently, or now we need to think differently about our values or what we are about as a company. Well,
Mhm.
what I think we should be doing, and again, what Disrupt HR hopefully encourages people to do, is to think about how can we stay ahead of change? How can we prepare for something that may work better in the future than what's working now? So I'm a big advocate for looking at even what's working, and when things are going well, okay, maybe take a couple of days or a couple of weeks to take a breath and say, wow, things are working well. I don't think that happens really for anybody. There's always something on fire somewhere.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
even when things are working well, we should be thinking about, what does the workplace look like with what we know today in 6 months from now,
Mhm.
2 years from now?
Mhm.
Certainly, look at one critical part of, the talent side of the business is recruiting and hiring people. My goodness, that's changed dramatically
Oh,
over the last
yeah. That
5
is
years in terms of what people expect in a job, what they'll accept in a job. We've gone from when I started in the workplace decades ago, you really looked for a company that you could stay with forever, and
Mhm.
you wanted a place that would offer you a pension plan and benefits that would, carry you through past retirement. That's evolved over the years, but certainly in today's climate globally, again, we like to blame certain generations, but it's not just the younger generations. People are looking at work as, I'm going to go work somewhere where I can learn and grow. And that might be
Mhm.
6 months that I stay there. I might stay there for a couple of years, but they're not looking at their careers in the same way. And so if we still have hiring practices and expectations of our employees that we're hiring you, we're slapping on these golden handcuffs and you're going to stay here forever, that's not going to be as helpful to us. Not going to be able to recruit people in today's mindset, because that's not
Mhm.
what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And therefore, it's going to be a big talent gap in our organization. So the world of work's changing, but I think the forward thinking, disruptive leaders, again, not just in HR, but I'm focused on the HR folks, or the
Mhm.
people, um, we are thinking about, what do we need to plan for in the future that is likely unknown, but with where things are heading, or how trends are going, or what is being predicted, or where the data shows us that things are going. What do we need to do differently in the future with things that are working now, with things that are broken, or with things that we don't even have in place that maybe, 10 years ago, people didn't have in place policies, procedures, a culture around hybrid or remote work. There were very few people that had the opportunity to work remotely, and they didn't even have to call in on Zoom calls or Teams calls, then,
Yeah.
because they were just remote. They were kind of
Yeah.
forgotten. But here we are 10 years later, or even 5 years later, and if you don't have at least a policy or thoughts about how to have potentially some people working remotely or hybrid in your organization, again, depending on your industry, maybe there are still places. I just talked with someone today, that, they work at a zoo. Okay, so the employees have to come in and take care of the
Yeah.
animals. It's
Yeah.
probably hard to do most of the jobs at the zoo remotely, but administratively, can some people work remotely at the zoo? That's something, again, we didn't think about 10 years ago, that we've all had to evolve and change over the last, particularly 5 years. But
Mhm.
be like, it's hard to say 5 years now in the future, because I don't think any of us can fathom, people that are
Yeah.
doing your 10-year plans, good luck with
Yeah.
that. Uh, but really, a year in 2026, what's gonna be different? In 2027, what's gonna be different? We should be planning for that.
I have to ask, any thoughts about what's gonna be different in 2026?
Yeah, that's, I think the elephant in the room is AI and how it impacts the workplace and the workforce, and both company opinions about what it will and won't do, and employees' thoughts about how it's going to impact their work. I think we've seen in 2025, there's starting to be a slight shift to people realizing that implementing AI or bringing it into the workplace isn't all about efficiency, because they're not seeing the efficiency gains that they thought they would by cutting 20% of their workforce
Yeah,
and
yeah.
building a bunch of agents and chatbots. There still is a human connection that's needed. And, that wasn't maybe something that we perceive until we actually did that in the workplace. So I think hopefully, my goal is that we start to see it as a way to enhance people's work, as
Mhm.
a way to help them be more productive so that they can do more creative and strategic thinking or focus on higher value work. But
Mhm.
that in 2026, I think, is where for HR people in particular, the real work needs to be done. We need to be looking at our jobs differently. What is the high value work that we want to push people towards? What are the things that can absolutely be done by automation or AI or any of those types of things that don't require human intervention? I think some of the companies that were in the headlines in 2025, like Moderna, um, or BCG or companies that really went all in on AI, one of the important things they did first was to evaluate what work was truly human before saying, "Oh, wow, AI is coming in. We can probably automate a bunch of stuff. Let's cut a bunch of low-level jobs and let's pause all entry-level hiring because we don't need those people to do, regular repetitive work." I think again, those type of companies didn't look at it that way, but the companies that did are now saying, well, what we're missing by not bringing in entry level hires are people who are growing with our culture and our systems who will become the leaders that we need in the future, or that they're coming in with a different perspective on how we can use AI. And we've not thought about, again, how those people can bring higher value work in the past. So that's the real challenge, I think, in 2026. Maybe not so much about well, it is how the work will change, but where does HR and the people side of the business need to be focused? It's on
Mhm.
reevaluate jobs. How do we reevaluate the work? How do we focus people and train them? That's a big piece of what will need to be done in 2026. A lot of studies are showing that companies, again, are bringing in AI, but they haven't done the training to show employees how to really utilize it. So their investment is not paying off. That's where HR really can add value. Looking at a broad perspective of how we use AI in the workplace, what is the higher value work that we want or we think and believe that only humans can do today?
Mhm.
How do we prepare and train people to do that higher value work while also preparing and training them for how they can implement AI in their own jobs to do some things more efficient that they don't have to do as a human?
So I've watched a few videos, and you don't actually come across as an agitator or a subversive person. You seem actually quite respectful. So what kind of mindset do you think we need in approaching disruption?
I love that question and the way you framed it because that's how I see myself too.
Okay, perfect.
I
Perfect.
think, so being the chief excitement officer of Disrupt HR or associated with disruption would not have been what I would have told you many years ago would be part of my brand. But I think what is important for me and what I encourage others to do is to be open. I'm open and I'm curious. I want to know if there are better ideas out there. I'm happy to listen to people who think differently than me. And Disrupt HR was founded because of that. I was on an advisory board for a local startup entrepreneur for his company, and we were just having a lunch meeting, and I was hearing all the great things that was going on in their company and giving my thoughts about that. And it was about 3 years into me having started my own business as a speaker, and he turned the conversation around and said, "What are you seeing out there as a speaker? You're 3 years into this now, what's coming in the future for you?" And I was just kind of, again, thinking about the future, and I said, "I speak on a lot of conference stages in the HR recruiting talent space." At the time, I was doing maybe 50 or 60 conferences a year, and I said, "I see a lot of the same people speaking on these stages, and I hear a lot of the same presentations or same ideas." There's
Mm,
our conference always something about compliance. There's always the attorneys telling you what you can't do and trying to scare everybody, and then there's the motivational speaker who's telling you what the future could look like. And all of that is not a criticism of any conference or HR conference because most people go to one, not 50. And conference organizers do need reliable speakers and topics
yeah.
that people want to
Yeah.
hear. So I wasn't looking at that as, well, that's wrong and it needs to be different. What I felt like was there was something that could be expanded on. Again, a stage where we were getting people on this, giving people the opportunity who aren't on those conference stages, who aren't sharing same ideas. I wanted to hear topics like in the beginning, maybe it's more common now, but I know in the beginning I was very proud to see that at Disrupt HR events, we were having people come up and talk about LGBTQ issues or the Me
Mm.
Too movement or again, thinking about leadership differently. One of my favorite presentations in the early days, I believe it was in Toronto, and the topic was why you should play favorites as a leader. That's not a conference topic that you're going to hear.
Oh, yeah.
Her 5-minute talk and idea, again, she made some good I love Disrupt HR should really be kind of flipping an idea on its head, and her point was you spend most of the time managing your bottom performers when it is the top performers who are, getting the most results. So as a leader, you should be, obviously favorites is the play on words there, but you should be focusing your attention there. So that was the goal with Disrupt HR and having that meeting with him because he's an instigator, he's a starter, I'm an executor.
Mhm.
He kind of like lit the flame under that and he said, let's do this. Let's hold an event in Cincinnati. Let's invite some of the cool people we know to give a talk. So, you know, is it my way of going to say, yeah, let's hold 5-minute, 20 slide, 15-second talks at a brewery and give people free beer and allow them to cuss on stage? I probably wouldn't have come up with that idea. But because I partnered with someone or I shared my idea with someone who helped to make it better, it became something that brought a lot of what we were both thinking to the table and again made it different and unique where because I was so entrenched in the regular conference type flow,
Yes,
I might have
yes.
just created a different type of conference. So I
Mhm.
think that's important for people who are wanting to be disruptive or to think about how they can make positive change. Do you have diversity of thought, ideas, all the types of diversity in the people that you're involving in that? Because different people will bring different perspectives, different ideas to the table, and that's likely where your best ultimate idea is gonna come from. If you just bring people in who, again, maybe you have a onboarding process that is working pretty well today, but you get a wild hair and you say, "I wanna disrupt our onboarding process. I'm gonna bring in everybody who works in the onboarding process into a meeting and ask them how we can do it better, different." They might not have as many ideas as if you say, I'm going to bring in some recent new hires. I'm going to talk to some people at other
Mm.
companies to bring in somebody from marketing, to maybe give us some fresh thoughts or perspectives on how we
Mm.
disrupt or change our onboarding process. Because it's difficult for those of us who are entrenched in doing the work to
Yes.
often think how it could be done differently. We're better at
Right.
thinking what couldn't be, but when other people test that or challenge us on that or bring in ideas of something that they've seen or heard or read or, come up with in a dream, who knows, then it's a way that we can all, I think, be disruptive. So I'm excited that, I am involved in this world, but I'm able to amplify the ideas of others rather than being the chief disruptor myself.
Right. Right. Okay. Uh, so for someone in mid-level HR, which is most of my audience, they're not decision makers. Sometimes they may not even have a lot of access to a decision maker. How can they still be disruptors? And what skills really does being a disruptor take?
I'd say the biggest one that I've said it earlier is curiosity. Curiosity
Mm.
about the business, curiosity about what the biggest challenges are that the business is facing, what are the biggest opportunities, and that may be your own personal perspective, but also that's informed by what you're hearing from leadership or others.
Mhm.
So, biggest challenge in the business for 2026 is that we have to increase our revenue. This year, we lost money as a company, so we've got to figure out how to grow revenue. Then I would dive deep into how do we actually generate revenue as a company? What are the drivers of that? Is it
Mhm.
our salespeople? Is it our proprietary,
Mm.
secret formula? What are the things that drive revenue? And then I, as an HR person, how do I contribute to that? So being curious about, okay, here's our goal as a company.
Mhm.
What drives that? What do I need to understand about what drives that? And then how does HR help enable that? You hear the phrase all the time, like, talent strategy should drive business strategy, or aligning talent strategy with business strategy. And we say that, and it sounds good and it is good, but not a lot of people, or not enough leaders in HR actually know what that means. And what that
Mhm.
means is a complete in-depth understanding of what the business strategy is, what are the
Mhm.
challenges and opportunities that are associated with that, and then
Mhm.
HR diving in head first into how do we enable that? How do we attack the
Mhm.
problems from a people perspective? How do we overcome the challenges and opportunities? How do we take advantage of opportunities? And again, training, productivity, tools and resources, hiring the right people, retention of the right people. All of those are things that are gonna drive that, and all of those are things that HR should be taking a lead in.
Where are you actually at the moment seeing some great opportunities for disruption? Anything?
I created a new keynote for 2025, and when I started that process about this time in 2024, I was kinda, like, adamant that I was going to create a keynote where I could talk to HR leaders about how, again, they can drive value and lead in transformation in today's disruption, without talking about AI. And after, working on the talk and gathering my ideas and thoughts for a little while, I'm like, "I'm not an AI expert, but I
Mhm.
not talk about AI, and I can't
Mhm.
challenge myself." Again, I'm never gonna be the one who comes in and helps you implement your AI strategy, or helps you to choose the right tools or whatever, because there are better people out there, that can do that, and I would be
Mhm.
happy to refer people to them. But what I want is both myself and, again, HR leaders to really have an in-depth understanding of, back to what I said earlier, how do we have AI implementation in our workplace enable and empower our people and enhance the work that they do, rather than approaching it from an efficiency gain or a cost reduction or a headcount reduction? I mean, that's
Mm.
long case in the business world. If the business needs to cut costs, the first thing we do is we cut training, we cut recruiting, and then we cut hiring, and then we start laying people off. All of those are the absolute wrong way to approach needing to cut costs in the business, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Maybe some of those things need to be reduced or cut, but the people who are actually gonna give you the ideas and the innovation and do the delivery of the work that needs to be
Mhm.
done to actually change things and make more money and grow the business and stay competitive, it's the people side of the business. So if we stop investing in that, then we're going to actually go backwards, not just
Mm.
reducing costs, but we're going to put ourselves in a hole. And again, a lot of companies are doing that even today. So, where can HR focus their disruptive efforts in 2026? Whether you're in a 100-person company, or you're an HR department of one, or you're in a 10,000-person company and you're part of a larger HR team, educate yourself on how AI impacts the business and people and the work in general. And even OpenAI, which is ChatGPT, has a whole training program that's free. Um, I have it up in a browser on my website now for HR on how to use AI. So for anyone who's saying, I don't even know where to start, just start.
Yeah.
Put into ChatGPT, how can I get a basic understanding of how to use AI in HR? Recommend some resources and give me some source links. Start with AI, asking it how to use AI, but you really need to have more than just a surface level understanding,
Mhm.
but really lead. I encourage HR people to be leading the conversation in their organizations about how we're going to implement AI with our workforce and in our workplace. Because
Mhm.
again, allowing the CFO or the CIO or others, and I say allowing, if they're leading the
Yeah.
conversation, it's going to be an efficiency focus,
It
productivity.
is. It is. And if we don't, I've said that before myself, if we don't get ahead of this, we're
Yep,
gonna be following up, cleaning up, and doing a lot of terminations.
exactly. And or following up, cleaning up being, again, 2025 has proven to a lot of companies that they're not seeing the efficiency and productivity gains just by turning on a chatbot. So truly, HR leaders need to be educating themselves on AI, how it implements or interacts in their workplace, how it can be used. Start if you have leaders who are reticent on how to use AI, or maybe they're kind of saying, no, we don't want this. Start in HR first. Show them how you and your team can
Mm.
enhance your work, do more
Mhm.
higher value work. Be the pilot if
Mhm.
have that level of authority to say, we're going to test it in HR first. I did that. I was a fractional executive and for a company for about a year, many years ago, when I don't remember the name of the software tool, but it was something that companies were using for more like an internal chat function. And again, it's hard for
Mhm.
us to think now with everybody having Teams and
Right.
Slack. But back in the day, you didn't have the ability to really instant message people, but there were tools that were coming in to do that. And so in this company where I was working as an interim exec CHRO, I said, I want to try this because we had like 20 offices in 23 states in the US, and it was a really distributed workforce. And one of the challenges that when I kind of went out on a listening tour was that we didn't have one message coming out from headquarters. That it was a message that was to the VP that was then delivered to the district manager, delivered then to the group, so it was getting watered down. And so I was looking at this tool as a way for us to be able to share one message and communicate better with all employees. And immediately the CIO shut me down and said, absolutely not. And so I went a little rogue. And again, I don't necessarily say everybody should do that, but I was a consultant, so you can let me go. So
Right.
I went to a rogue and I brought it in and I just did it in HR. And we tried it for a little while, and then I went to the sales team because, again, you have to look at who are some of the biggest influencers in your organization. Well, it was a heavily sales-driven organization. I went to the sales team and I said, "This is how it's working for us in HR. It's really helping. Would you like to pilot it on your team?" And he said, "Sure." And so once that started happening, obviously the CIO got wind of it, and he came to see me, and he's like, "This is not what you should be doing." And I said, can you help? This is working. How can you help me do something similar? And he actually came back later and it was a Google Suite company. And he's like, Google actually has within the product that we already own the ability to do this. So but we proved success in HR first. And then
Mhm.
we went to an organization that was influential and said, we've proven success. Do you want to try it? They started seeing results and that prompted action where before the answer was just no. Uh, so if there's a way, and again, you don't always have to go rogue, if you can get permission to do a pilot or to try something that is new that maybe people are nervous about, there are ways to do these things by starting small and proving results or testing results. And maybe something doesn't work and we have to back up and try again. But if we're just sitting still and being idle and doing nothing, um, then again, we're going to be in reactive mode when things are broken or when someone comes to us and says, uh, I bought, the CIO says, I bought, ChatGPT Enterprise for the organization. And as a result of spending X million dollars on that, we're going to have to cut 20% headcount. And you're like, what?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What did you think about, how what impacts that would have on our brand, on our culture, on, the fact that we don't have a lot of low performers in the organization, we'd be letting go some high performers, if you're on the back end of that discussion, you're not only playing cleanup, you're probably not going to be successful in heading off the inevitable. So be on the forefront, be in the room, invite yourself, ask, hey, we have an AI implementation team that's meeting and I'd love to be a part of that, mid-level HR person who doesn't report, isn't on the executive team. Invite yourself. Be the person who asks questions. Have not only the perspective of the employee side of the business, but have a business perspective. So don't just
Mhm.
go in and say, oh, no, we can't do that because that's illegal or that's against the rules. Or what you need to be saying is, if we did this, would this increase revenue? Would this improve productivity? When you have business focused questions, in addition to your HR
Mhm.
focus, which is again where you should be representing that side of the business,
Mhm.
you're going to be more likely to listen to you and want you in the room. I've been in that position myself in the past and thankfully had a good boss who mentored me and said, Jennifer, nobody wants you in those rooms because you're always the one telling them no. Um, what you need to do is to show up to listen. And if you disagree or if you feel like we can't do something, instead of saying, no, we can't do this, what you should be saying instead is, this causes me some concern. I'd like to look into how this might impact the business if we implemented this change. Could I get back to you in a week after I've done some research and maybe even propose a different way?
Mhm.
So I'm not just going to tell you no because I think it's the wrong thing to do. I'm either going to go prove that it's the wrong thing to do through data, through information. And if I do that, then it's not just bonus points, it's a requirement. I also need to come to you with a suggestion for what we could do instead.
Yes,
We
exactly.
obviously proposed this change that I'm saying won't work because we need something to change. We need, to take advantage of an opportunity. We need to solve a problem. So if I'm not part of the solution, I'm just telling you that all your solutions won't work, then I become a stopper to progress in the business. And I've heard it called in the past, the business prevention unit. HR is the business business prevention unit
I
instead
have
of
not heard that one. Ouch.
we don't wanna be the business prevention unit. We wanna be that when somebody's in a high level meeting where they're talking about a new change or something different, they look around and they go, "Wait a minute, we don't have anybody from HR in the room. We need to get them involved because we wanna hear their ideas and perspective as well."
Hmm.
You wanna be invited into the room. Sometimes you have to invite yourself first, show you add value, and then the invitations, I think, will come.
Well, one reflection on that I just is like you were demonstrating in that answer how HR can lead, which I
Mhm.
thought was super interesting. Um, so in sort of a similar vein, are there any ideas that have come out of Disrupt HR that's now mainstream? That's just how we do it.
Boy, I wish it was more than just a labor of love where I'd actually categorized results, et cetera. I'm sure there have. I mean, I have, a few regrets with Disrupt HR. One is that I haven't captured stories over the years that either people
Mhm.
personally or that every day LinkedIn for all the things that LinkedIn has challenges with their algorithm, it knows that I like Disrupt HR, so it shows me
Yeah,
all
yeah, yeah.
kinds of posts from people who have spoken at an event recently or who have attended an event, and I read their stories, and someone reminded me just last week, they're like, "It's your biggest regret that you haven't done it, so why don't you start doing it?" I'm like, that's why I need other people to call me on the carpet. Have I still started doing it? No. But do I read posts where people say, "I heard this great idea on the Disrupt HR stage last week, and I'm gonna take it back to my organization." One of the stories I share is I always say, "I love a good bad Disrupt HR speaker. I don't need you to be a polished professional speaker." I love speakers who, again, they're not polished as speakers, but they had an idea that they were passionate enough that they challenged themselves to do that 5-minute, 20 slide, 15-second auto advance format. And in one of the events that we had here in Cincinnati, which I still co-organize where we started, many years ago, we had one of those good, bad, disrupt HR speakers. He brought his talk on paper written down. He never looked up from the stage. He read his content, which was not engaging at all. But he was the last speaker before our short break for intermission. And after his talk, a couple of people came up to me and said, "Man, that guy was terrible, but I loved his idea, and
Yeah.
I'm going to take it back to my company." That's what I think has happened with Disrupt HR events, the hundreds of events that have been held around the world. It's sparked ideas for people. Can I think of, to answer your original question, something where now it's mainstream that a Disrupt HR speaker talk? There probably is, I just don't know about it, but I know there are hundreds or maybe even thousands of ideas that spread that people took back to their
Mhm.
organization, that maybe they tried from what they heard from a spark of an idea on a stage or what someone else had done. So that's I think where the disruption is happening. Uh, I'd love to be able to tell you, yeah, here's 5 ideas that, now Microsoft is doing because they heard it
Yeah,
at
yeah, yeah.
HR, but I don't have that kinda intel about it because these
Yeah.
are
Y
grassroots of it.
you
They're
know the
they're
most disruptive idea, or it was unusual, I have to say, like, the most unusual that I saw at any disrupt, someone was promoting, um, mushrooms as a leadership development tool.
I've seen that talk, yeah.
You know what? Like, I I don't do that, but, I was curious. I sure was curious.
I uploaded a video just this week, and again, I don't even remember what city because there are hundreds of videos I'm uploading every week. Um, and the title was something like, I don't think it was this, but it was something like "Why Your Leadership Team Should Be on Psychedelics." And again,
Yeah, yeah,
that's what I love
yeah.
about Disrupt HR. Maybe if if I get a chance to watch that talk, maybe that is the idea, but maybe it's also a play on something, but the goal is to spark thought, to
Mhm.
challenge people, and even Over the years, we've had some event organizers who maybe after their event, they reached out to me and they're like, somebody gave a talk that we weren't expecting that we completely disagree with. Um, their idea, should we post the video? And I tell them, I'm like, it's up to you, if you want to share the video or not. But the fact that, as long as you're not maybe advocating murder or something like that.
Mm,
But if they, like one of those talks was a person who was saying DEI was bad and
yeah.
wrong. The organizer was like, that's not my viewpoint. And I said, it doesn't need to be your viewpoint, but it's up
Yeah.
to you if you post it. And he ultimately decided he edited into the video. This does not reflect the views of,
Yes.
Disrupt HR City or the organizers, but we felt that it was an idea that on the other hand, that same person who gave the DEI's bad talk, I see again their post on LinkedIn where like people watched my Disrupt HR talk and I'm getting invited to speak in organization. So whether we like some ideas or we consider them good, um, I'm not for platforming hate or
Yeah.
anything of that nature. So again, I personally wouldn't want someone to get up and um, be truly divisive. And if I were aware of that, would I make the decision not to post the video? Maybe. It doesn't mean that there's not room for different ways of thinking, different ways of approaching things. Anytime you are opening up a stage to people to share their ideas, sometimes they're going to be ideas you agree with, and sometimes they're going to be not.
Um, I want to go circle back to the change thing. I talked about it a little bit at the beginning. And I've talked to other guests who are just talking about the constant pace of change. I'm hearing quite a lot on the channel lately. And this year was maybe with the year of burnout. Maybe that was last year. But people are seeming like they're reaching some sort of saturation point. My guests are talking about apathy, numbness was a whole topic, disengagement, burnout. Should we just pause? I know we can't pause the disruption, but should we?
I think you answered your own question. You said we can't. I mean, we
Maybe
can't.
we should though. Maybe I'm just I'm
I
maybe
don't think we
maybe
can
we need to be.
disengage from the world that we live in and the pace of change and the challenges and the uncertainty that's out there is exhausting, but it is real, and these are external forces that we don't control. So I think you have a choice to say, I'm going to withdraw from that. That's probably not going to end up going well for anybody if you do that, including yourself.
Mhm.
Or you can say, I need to figure out how I can approach this wisely. Um, and a big piece of that is how do you prioritize your own mental health and well being?
Yeah.
Are you working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, trying to keep up with the pace of change? If that's the case, then what do I need to do to change that?
Mhm.
It's probably not as easy as just saying, I'm going to work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, because something's happening. Either you don't, again, you're back to you don't have enough people, you don't have the right people don't have the right tools, training, et cetera. Something's causing that, more likely than it's just you deciding to do that. But that's probably what needs to be changed. How do we ensure that the change burden is spread amongst people and not carried by one person, whether they've taken that on their own or whether we've assigned it to them? How do we ensure that we are encouraging our people to prioritize their well-being and taking time away from work? How do we make sure that we're providing resources for people so that they're not getting burnt out? I think change has always been inevitable. I worked, in the 90s, the mid to late 90s, I worked in a Japanese automotive organization where just during the 7 or 8 years that I worked there, we built an additional plant across the parking lot from the one that we had to add another product line. We built on to the first plant twice. We added on to the new plant 3 times. We kept adding more customers, more product, more growth. We doubled in size while I was there in terms of employees. And I remember one day in one of our leadership team meetings, our purchasing director saying, I'm tired of new customers. I need a break. Okay. Well, again, is the decision to say as an organization, we no new customers? Probably not, because that adds economic viability for our employees, for our community, for our customers get value
Mhm.
from the product that we create, et
Uh-huh.
cetera. What we need to think about is what is the burden that's being placed on the purchasing team or the purchasing director that she would feel that way. If change is inevitable and growth is going to continue, and that's actually our goal, do we have her team structured correctly? Do the systems support all the work that they need to do? Are they having to work harder because they don't have the right tools or resources? Again, that's where HR should get curious. Okay, we're going to continue growing, Susan. So
Right.
what the real challenge is what are we not doing to support you and your team in this growth effort so that it's
Yeah.
not seen as a negative by you or your team, or it's not felt that way, because we don't want to burn you out. You're valuable and we want you to be fully engaged and to keep you here. And if we continue at this pace, clearly you're either going to burnt out and have health challenges that will prevent you from working, or you're going to go somewhere else thinking that it's going to be better when it may or may not be. Um, but growth is theoretically good, or, good sustained
Yeah,
growth
yeah,
is,
yeah.
but sustained in the sense that we think about how to properly resource it, support it. And if one of our values as an organization or as leadership is that we want people to be engaged and excited and not burnt out and have some sort of balance in their lives, are we modeling that ourselves? Are we putting processes in place so that people can do that? So there are a lot of things we can do, I think, as leaders and individuals to address some of the burnout and fatigue and numbness to your feedback. And we're not doing that. Instead, we're just saying change is inevitable and I'm so tired of this and how do I get off the train,
Mhm.
rather than thinking about how do I actually put systems, processes, resources, other people to support in
Mhm.
place so that change doesn't feel so overwhelming, because it's going to continue.
It surely is. It surely is. All right. We're getting to the end of this. Where can someone find you? And what resources do you suggest that you think would help other people, my audience, become more effective disruptors?
Sure. You can find all things about me at jennifermcclure.net.
Mhm.
If you go there, I do have a newsletter that you can sign up for, where I try
Mhm.
to share at least one section of my newsletter every 2 weeks is three resources that I've found interesting.
Okay.
So share
Okay.
things like an AI training for HR leaders,
Right.
or a survey or a study or a training program that I've taken or maybe found helpful. So I try to make my community aware of those, and I share those
Okay.
on LinkedIn as well. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, if you put in Jennifer McClure, I hope I come up first. But if
I
I
bet you
don't,
do. I
I'm
imagine
Jennifer
you do.
McClure, CEO of Unbridled Talent and Chief Excitement Officer at Disrupt HR. You can also find all things about Disrupt HR at disrupthr.co, not .com, .co. And you there can find, maybe your city is holding Disrupt HR events and you weren't aware, or maybe it's not, and you should be the person that brings it to your city. Or if you want to speak at an event, a lot of the cities accept applications for speaking on our website, or at least you can find out when their event is and reach out to the organizers to inquire about speaking opportunities.
Okay. All right. I will put links to all that in the show notes. Thank you so much for being my 5th anniversary guest.
Yes, I'm honored to be here. And again, congratulations. 5 years is a long time to do anything. So
Yeah.
congrats to you.
Week after week after week. Okay. Well, thanks, Jennifer. I love that. I especially like the way a number of times you brought in examples, or just the way you phrased it, even of how HR can be leaders. And I think that's so valuable. If you out there took something else away from this discussion, please share in the comments. She briefly actually, she talked a lot about business strategy, and I did a pretty interesting episode on strategy recently. A link to that is right here. Thanks for watching out there. We will see you next time.